Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the International Centre Goa for the 9th ICG 2020's Development Dialogue. We have with us Mr. Rajan Anandan, Managing Director of Sequoia Capital and Surge, who will be in discussion with Mr. Dattaraj Salgaonkar, Vice President of the International Centre Goa, on Startup India, what is next. Before we begin, I would like to invite Mr. Yatin Kakodkar, President of the International Centre Goa, for his introductory remarks. Thank you.
A warm welcome to the International Centre Goa and to the 9th webinar program of the series 2020's Development Dialogue. The topic today is Startup India, what is next? And the speaker is Mr. Rajan Anandan, Managing Director, Sequoia Capital and Surge. As part of the leadership team at Sequoia Capital, Mr. Anandan is focusing on developing Surge into the world's top scale-up program for startups by acting as an investment advisor and mentor to the program's founders. Surge aims to engineer rapid early progress for startups by enabling disproportionate access to capital, talent, network, and decades of company building knowledge. Mr. Anandan's deep understanding of technology, operating expertise, and a track record of growing tech businesses across the region will help Surge's founders scale and build the businesses of tomorrow. Prior to Sequoia, as the Vice President of Google India and Southeast Asia, Mr. Anandan played a key role in expanding the region's internet ecosystem while accelerating Google's innovation and the growth in the region. He's also a prolific angel investor who has backed a large number of successful startups at very early stages. Mr. Anandan also led Microsoft and Dell in India, worked for Michael Dell, the founder of Dell, and was earlier a partner at McKinsey & Company at Chicago. He has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and a master's degree in manufacturing systems engineering from Stanford University. In conversation with Mr. Anandan is Mr. Dattaraj Salgaonkar. Mr. Salgaonkar is the chairman of the Goa-based VM Salgaonkar Corporation Private Limited, with a presence in equity or private equity, hospitality, real estate. He's passionate about education and the arts, and his foundation runs schools and colleges in Goa. He founded the Sunapran's Goa Center for the Arts in 2007, which has transformed the Goan cultural landscape. He's a production engineer from Vijay Bombay University with an MBA from Wharton Business School. Mr. Salgaonkar is a founder member of ICG, Vice President of ICG, and chairs the ICG Programs Committee. I now hand over the session to Mr. Salgaonkar, and I hope you find it interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Yatin, and very warm welcome to Rajan. Thank you so much.
Raj, you're on mute.
Welcome, Rajan. Thank you so much.
You keep going on mute, Raj.
Thank you so much for being with us today. And let me dive straight in. Let me take you back to your childhood, Rajan. What was it growing up in Sri Lanka? Who were the people who influenced you, your family, your father, the colleges you went to, and who are those who continue to inspire you since then?
Yeah, first of all, Raj, thank you for inviting me, and Yatin. Great to be here. I'm a huge fan of Goa. Miss coming to Goa. I think we normally come to Goa several times a year, and looking forward to getting COVID behind us so that I can actually come to your beautiful, beautiful state. So Raj, as you said, look, I grew up in Sri Lanka. I grew up in a family, that was filled with sport. My dad was a lawyer turned entrepreneur who sort of loved endurance sports. So he would do crazy things like swim the English Channel. He was the first Sri Lankan to swim the English Channel. He would, stand on one leg for 3 days, tread water in a swimming pool for, days on end, and so on and so forth. So, from my very early days, and by the way, I am absolutely terrible at sport. My younger brother, there are two of us. My younger brother was national diving champion when he was 13, but I could barely make the cricket team. many years later, I asked my cricket coach, my high school cricket coach, how come you played me? I was so bad. He said, I just felt bad for you because you trained so damn hard, So, when you grow up in a family of, of very good athletes, and one thing you learn is, you have to try really, really hard. But one thing I wish I had known as a teenager was, you should do things that you're really good at, and I should have been coding instead of trying to play cricket and rugby. But look, obviously my dad was an inspiration because, he simply believed that anything was possible. Now obviously I think he was like absolutely insanely nuts to do the things he did. And from my mom, I, learned that, you have to put up with the crazies, which is, and interestingly, he was an entrepreneur, but he passed away, unfortunately, in the 80s. And my mom ended up running his business, and she was a much better entrepreneur than he was, because his passion was really doing other stuff. And then, I left to the US, and then, spent 20 years in the US. And I'd say, look, I try to find inspiration, Raj, everywhere I go, because I believe that in life, you should look for greatness in life. I mean, you can live life either, not liking the things around you, or, sort of worrying about the things around you. But I try to find the best in everyone. And as a result, I think I've had, so many people that I've learned from over the years. I'm so incredibly grateful for the opportunities that I've had. And there's there's so many people there. It's hard to name all the folks that I'm grateful for.
Thank you, Rajan, for sharing these times with us. After graduating from MIT, and then you went to Stanford, what made you pursue tech at that time? I know decades back, tech was different from what it is now. Explain to us what made you pursue tech.
No, so I didn't get into tech, Raj. So after Stanford, it's interesting. I studied manufacturing systems engineering, and I really wanted to work for General Motors or Ford, and because those were like manufacturing companies, and they wouldn't hire me because I didn't have a US green card, I didn't have a citizenship, and at the time, this was in the 90s. They only wanted to hire American citizens, so I basically needed a job, and so I interviewed with consulting firms and investment banks. Ended up at McKinsey, and at McKinsey I did do some tech, probably sort of the first internet boom. Really, I used to lead the internet practice in the Midwestern part for McKinsey. But I did all kinds of things at McKinsey. I was not really sort of only focused on tech. Actually, I got into tech was, when I left McKinsey, I went to work for Michael Dell, who was the founder of Dell Computers. And that's really when, when I really kind of got steeped into tech. I was doing a fair bit of tech, but I was also doing lots of other things, right? My first client at McKinsey was a steel company, in Chicago. And then I served animal biotechnology companies. I served advice. I was doing a lot of McKinsey work as a partner in the Chicago office. And so I would say really, so it was, I didn't start off in tech.
That's really very interesting to know. Not.
Raj, you keep muting yourself.
No, I don't know why it goes off, but anyway, that's my tech knowledge. Tell us about your experience at Google. What was its culture, philosophy, and core values? So much has been written about it. What was your personal experience?
Yeah, look, I think I had a wonderful time at Google. I spent 8 years at Google. I joined them to build the India business, and the business was about $90 million when I joined. India was close to 2 billion when I left 8 years later, $2 billion of revenue. And then I ended up running India and Southeast Asia, pretty much all of Google Asia except for China and Japan, which is about a $4-5 billion business, when I left it. Look, I would say, Google's a very special company because, it genuinely believes that, it's one of the values that Google has is, focus on the users and all else follows, right? So what that really means is, because it's a consumer internet company, at the core of Google is a consumer internet company, right? is build products that users love. And if you can win the user, everything else will follow. So, it's this obsessive focus on building consumer products that really, really, delight their users, right? So you can use, you can pick your favorite Google product, whether it's search or YouTube or Android or Maps. These are products that, delight literally today billions of consumers. It's also a company that really believes in a few things that are very, very important. One is, hiring the absolute best talent in the world. I think, obviously having worked at McKinsey over a decade, I got the privilege to see and serve a large number of companies across many different industries. And then, after McKinsey, I worked at Dell, I worked at Microsoft and Google, and now at Sequoia. Over the last couple of years, I've seen literally, dozens and dozens of companies. Look, at the end of the day, whether you're going to build a great company or not, is really a function of only two things. It's about the people that you hire, and it's about the culture that you build. And I think at Google, there was this extraordinary focus on hiring absolutely great talent. So I'll tell you an interesting story, Raj. For my first year at Google, I didn't have an assistant, right? Because Google has a test for the assistant. So if you want to hire an assistant, the assistant has to pass a test, and nobody could pass this test. And I was like, first I was like, this is crazy, man. How can we have a test? But what was very interesting, Raj, is this is a fascinating story, So anyway, finally I managed to, I was fortunate because one of our awesome team members in ops, she came up to me one day and said, look, I want this job. I'm like, why do you want this job? She's like, I want to work with you and I want to learn, right? So anyway, so she was doing sort of ops stuff, right? She was very good at ops. And anyway, so she comes, takes this job, and like 2 weeks later, I'm having a one-on-one with her. And she's like, Rajan, you're spending your time completely the wrong way. I'm like, what do you mean? So then she pulls out my OKRs, so Google likes this called, objectives and key results. And she says, look, I mapped how you spend your time to your OKRs. And you're spending your time completely wrong. Can you imagine? This was my assistant, right? So what happens when you hire amazing talent is they just go above and beyond. So I think that was very, very exciting. And the other thing is, look, if you hire really amazing talent, you have to empower them, right? You can't micromanage them. So at Google, you get fired as a manager or a leader, for very few things, right? One of them is if you micromanage your people, because if you hire really smart people and you don't empower them, they will speak up. And so I think it's a very, very empowered culture. A lot of people used to ask me, right? Is it the fancy officers, the free food, the massages, the laundry on campus, all these kinds of things. None of that, by the way, is the reason that Google, like when I was at Google, I was there for 8 years. For 6 years in a row, we were the number one, like in, I can't remember, great companies to work or best companies to work or some award like that. And people used to ask me, like, what makes it a great company to work for? And it really was the empowerment, right? It's about, you are really, really empowered to give it your best. And so it's a set of things like that, right? And obviously, winning is important, right? When a company is winning, obviously the teams feel great about winning. So it's a long answer to your question, Raj, but it's a wonderful company. But I think for all of you, I assume everybody who's dialing in, either is running your own business or running a large business, just make sure you hire great talent and you create a culture that's extraordinary, where the smartest or the best people, you don't have to be in the smartest, right? The best people who fit your culture are able to thrive, right? And if you do that, you're going to win. And if you don't do that, you're not going to win. So I'd say those are some of the things.
Fascinating. Today you're at Sequoia, and how was the transition from Google to Sequoia? I mean, what excited you to start being on the investing side full time?
Yeah, so Raj, as a, for the last, before I joined Sequoia for almost, certainly 15 years, because we moved back to the region, we moved to India in 2005. So I joined Sequoia in 2019. So for 14 years in India, I had been an active angel investor and been an active angel investor in the US as well. So I had spent 20 years investing my own capital as an angel investor, obviously small amounts of money, and I had a very large portfolio, several hundred companies that I'd invested in, all tech and tech-enabled companies, right? In India, in Sri Lanka, where I'm from, in the US, a little bit in Southeast Asia. And I knew at some point I wanted to try my hand at being a full-time investor. And I was very fortunate, Shailendra, who leads Sequoia in our region, in India and Southeast Asia. Sequoia was launching this program called Surge. It's basically a seed stage program for startups. And we were catching up. I know most of the Sequoia. I've known Shailendra for a decade and several of the other partners. And he was catching up, saying, "Hey, look, we're going to launch this. What do you think about coming and joining us to kind of help us build this out?" And I thought that would be really, really interesting. So I knew that long answer to your question, but I've been, investing my own capital in startups for, many decades. And I knew that at some point I wanted to try it out. So this opportunity came up and I said, why not? Let's go for it.
Startups are the disruptors of industry. I mean, thinking about problems differently, solving them in a different fashion before the market even realizes the need for them. And once the market realizes, then it catches up many a time exponentially. They tend to grow very fast also and have a lot of agility. Big tech has, of course, enabled a lot of these startups, Rajan, as you know. But do you see a future where non-tech or startups not having a tech element would grow? Or is it all tech dependent?
No, I mean, look, I think, well, tech is, many, many different things, right, Raj, as you know. I mean, tech is not just digital, it's not just internet. I mean, you have biotech, you have clean tech. I mean, tech is so many different things, right? But if what you mean is, does it have to be consumer internet or traditionally what we call sort of software-driven products? Absolutely not, right? I mean, you look at some of the spaces where you're seeing some of the most disruptive innovation today. It's outside of digital, right? I mean, obviously there's enormous amounts of innovation in digital, which is where I spend most of my time. I mean, all my time. But if you look outside of, innovation in digital, right? You look at biotech, look at life sciences and what's going to happen in life sciences over the next 20 years. It's going to be extraordinary, right? I mean, Raj, if you and I are lucky, meaning, we have to make it through for about another decade or 15 years. We could live to be 150 years old, because of things like gene therapy and what's going to happen in life sciences, right? Then you look at another space like space tech, right? I mean, space tech is super interesting, right? I'm fascinated that the space race is now down to sort of entrepreneurs, not governments, right? It's no longer like the United States, China and Russia. It's like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. I mean, look at what's happening in space tech, right? I mean, it's just extraordinary, right? I mean, literally all of us are going to be going to space in the next 5 years, right? I mean, we can all say, hey, Raj, let's go have coffee in space. I'll meet you, I don't know, in some station, right? I mean, that's like literally a decade from now. So, and then finally, if you come to even like, Raj, to your business, right, which is the energy business, I think what's going to happen with clean energy is going to be extraordinary, right? I don't know what you think of things like green hydrogen, but I think, it's not 3-4 years away, but, it's certainly probably 10 years from now, right? And it could be just massive. You look at new kinds of materials. You look at, clean meats, right? Beyond Meat, Impossible Burger, companies like this, right? I mean, a company that's worth $10 billion, in all kinds of new foods. So long answer to your question, I think there's innovation everywhere, right? Actually, it's very interesting. Like cement is one of the, cement production is very bad for the environment, as you know, Raj, right? And the question is, can you make clean cement? So at MIT, which is where I went to undergrad, MIT has an, incubator. And one of the startups is basically, by the way, I have no idea how you make clean cement, but they're working on clean cement. So I mean, I think you're going to see innovation, over the next, in many ways, we're just getting started, Raj, when it comes to innovation. I think the best is yet to come. I think 20, 30, 40 years from now. I mean, take a look at carbon capture, right? Which is, if you're really going to get to net zero by 2050, we're going to have carbon capture technologies, many, many breakthroughs in carbon capture, right? A lot of that is still in the labs. It's far from production, but I think it's all going to happen. So I am super excited about innovation across the board, not just in digital, but across the board.
The world is going to be fascinating, I think, as the years go by. Coming back to startups, I mean, for many, it looks like startups are very easy way to make money. The media splashes them all over. The founders suddenly land up with millions and sometimes billions of dollars, and success seems easy. But this is not all true. There are lots of failures for everyone's success. So tell us something about the myths about startups, and then I'll come to the founder's dilemma. But let's hear from you. What are the myths of startups, which people, or misconceptions which people know around?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Raj. I mean, look, I think the most important thing to keep in mind is, to build a truly enduring company, right? Which has a lasting impact on either a country or an industry or the world, and also is truly viable. Takes 15, 20 years to build, right? There's no such thing as, overnight success. I think second, it's very, very difficult to do that. I mean, literally very, very few companies become truly enduring companies. You can look at India, you can look at the globe, you can look at technology, you can look at any industry that you want. So as you said, look, rightly, most startups actually fail, right? And in fact, I'll give you an interesting statistic, by the way. In China, this is from 2 years ago, 20% of unicorns fail. And I don't mean unicorns become not unicorns, right? You're valued at $1 billion and then some, 2 years later, you're valued at 200 million. I mean, you're valued at $1 billion or 5 billion or 10 billion and you go to zero. Right. So, so really being a unicorn. So most startups fail. And I think so only, very, very few startups actually, are able to even get to, $100 million valuation, let alone 500 or $1 billion. But even once even getting to a unicorn status, I mean, it's fantastic this year. We've already had 22 new Indian unicorns, right? But that's a marker, right? It's a marker that says, that's a good valuation marker. But at the end of the day, all our companies, need to generate large amounts of revenue. They need to generate large amounts of profit and cash flow. And that's then they have a shot at becoming an enduring company, right? You look at some of the largest companies in India today, be they TCS, be they HDFC Bank, be they Reliance. I mean, these are all cash generating machines, right? And I think, for a startup to really become an enduring company, takes much longer and actually need to get to that point, right? So I would say, look, I mean, I think a lot of young founders think that they can start a company and get rich quick. I mean, as you know, Raj, there's no get rich quick in entrepreneurship, right? It's a lot of hard work over many, 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 many years. So we have one thing we talk about at Surge to our early stage founders, which is every truly successful startup that has become an enduring company, in its first 5 or 10 years has had at least 5 near death moments, right? What I mean by that is these are moments when you think you're out, right? You have 24 hours of cash left, your co-founder left, your biggest competitor just raised 50 times more capital than you have. You got 22 lawsuits, including 5 in Supreme Court, and you don't think you're going to make it. The Indian government changed the laws on you, so you think you're completely done, right? So you have to go through those, right? And in many ways, those are the rites of passage to building an enduring company, the rites of passage to building a great company, right? And it takes a lot of grit. Just incredible grit to be able to go through those, right? Because the natural human instinct is when things get really, really tough, you give up and you just can't give up, right? So I think, one of the things I've learned, Raj, is, having worked very closely with some great entrepreneurs like Michael and Larry Page and others, but also in India, right? Being close friends with a number of our very successful entrepreneurs and now being in the ecosystem backing founders at the very, very early stages is resilience and grit is the most important attribute of a successful entrepreneur, without question, right? That is it. Because if you have resilience, if you have grit, and you just keep going, eventually you make it, as you Raj, Raj, as you know, eventually make it, because you're just so determined to keep going, right? And because everything, all the odds, as an entrepreneur, all the odds are against you, right? Everything is stacked up against you, right? And it just takes enormous grit and resilience. And what I can tell you is a lot of our unicorns today, they're going to go through a period of very, very, I mean, by the way, many of them have already been through very, very difficult periods of time, right? Everybody is celebrating Paytm. Vijay is a very dear friend. Vijay started his company in 1999, that was 22 years ago. So he's been at it, and, he's pivoted that company many times. As you know, he's been in many battles with, the largest brands in the world. He's just resilient. He's got extraordinary grit, and that's what it takes.
Amazing. I mean, that's good for many of us to know. It's nothing is easy. It's like swimming the channel or swimming the straits. You have to go on at it, on and on. What about the founder's dilemma? I mean, there are some brilliant founders and brilliant ideas, and many a time they want to go it alone, bring in investors, hires, or or angel investors. How crucial is the role of venture capital and angel investors like you, for example, in making the startup successful, in the sense that you have to guide them, mentor them in all these 5 moments, whatever they are. I mean, to hold their hand and say, okay, this is the path, this is the way, these are the hires, these are the things to do. How important is an angel investor or a company like yours?
Yeah, look, first of all, I think, Raj, as you know, there are many, bootstrapped, self-funded companies that are extremely successful, right? If you look at the technology ecosystem in India, the tech and tech-enabled ecosystem in India, there are many examples of entrepreneurs who built extraordinary companies without raising any capital, right? Sridhar Vembu has built Zoho without raising any capital. Nitin has built, Kamath has built Zerodha with no capital, and there are many others, right? So I think the important thing to keep in mind is, look, we tell our founders all the time, right? Look, fundraising is not the objective. The objective is to build a business. Now, if you need capital to build a business, then yes, you have to raise capital. But there are businesses where you can actually bootstrap your way to off the ground, and then you can keep bootstrapping your way to actually build a pretty large business. And we have enough examples of those kinds of companies, right? In fact, what's very interesting, Raj, is that the most valuable companies in the world today have raised very little capital, right? Raj, do you know, like, now Google is valued at almost $2 trillion, right? Almost $2 trillion. Do you know how much venture capital Google raised in its lifetime? Any guesses, Raj? $25 million. That's it.
Oh,
one round, $25 million. Sequoia and Kleiner Perkins ran a $25 million Series A. That was the only round of financing Google ever did. Actually, closer to home, right? InfoEdge, which is now an $8 billion market cap company. Sanjeev Bikhchandani raised only one round of financing, $1.7 million. So about 10 crores in today's rupees. 1.4 million of that, Raj, was in the bank when Sanjeev took InfoEdge public. Right, incredibly capital efficient, right? So I think that's a very important point to keep in mind. Now, if you do need to raise capital, right, I do think it's very important to get the right partners, right? Whether it doesn't matter whether it's angel investors or institutional investors like Sequoia or others. I mean, India has many very successful institutional investors, right? It's very important to get the right partners on your side as investors, Raj. The reason is because, look, it's going to be a long journey, okay? It's going to be 10 to 15 years for you to build a company. Along the way, you're going to have really terrible times. We just talked about it, 5 near-death moments, right? And you want a partner who's seen those movies before, right? You don't want somebody who's going to freak out saying, oh my God, I invested $5 million. What's happening to this company, right? Because, and then look, there's a lot of institutional learning around company building that an investor could bring to an early stage, especially in the early stages, right? So at Sequoia, Surge is basically our early stage program. And the reason that Sequoia India launched Surge is exactly for the reason where we felt that, founders very early in their company building journey could benefit a lot from learning how to build a great company, all the different aspects, right? How to hire right, how to build a great culture, how to build products, how to get to product market fit, how to scale sales, how to scale growth, all those kinds of things. Founders can benefit a lot from having a community of like-minded founders who are going through the journey at the same time. Founders can benefit a lot from mentors, entrepreneurs who are maybe 4 or 5 years ahead of them, who've been through that journey and really scale their companies. And founders can also benefit from how to raise financing, right? I mean, fundraising is an art and science, right? Especially as you want to raise larger and larger rounds of financing. There's a great way to do it, and there's a way maybe you don't want to do it. So I think there's a lot of benefit to getting the right investors on your side. But you got to start off. But keep in mind that as you know, Raj, right? If you can build a $10 billion company and not have any external investors, that is fantastic. I mean, talk to Nitin, the founder of Zerodha, and he plans to stay private forever. And he can, because it generates an extraordinary amount of cash. As a business, right? As a business.
Well, amazing. I mean, there are so many different moving parts in this startup space. So, for us, it's fascinating just to hear you speak about them. Tell me, in the post-COVID stage, Rajan, are startups reimagining themselves? Where do you see the large growths coming in? And, there's been an acceleration of many companies into online and also into technology, changing the way they do business. What would be the key sectors in India that would benefit most as far as startups are concerned in the post?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the startup ecosystem, Raj, look, we've come a long way as an ecosystem, right? So if you go back to 2010, India had 0 unicorns. A unicorn is a $1 billion privately held company, $1 billion valuation privately held company. We had 0 unicorns in 2010. 2015, we had 2 unicorns. That's it, or 4 unicorns. I think 2, maybe 3 or 4 unicorns in 2015. And this year, 2021, despite COVID, an incredibly challenging second wave of COVID, as you know, actually today, a crypto exchange became a unicorn. Is the 22 new unicorns in India this year in 7 months. It's crazy, right? So I've actually lost track. I think we must be pretty close to like 60 unicorns in India or something like that. It's very interesting. About 2018, when India had maybe 7 or maybe like 10 or 12 unicorns, we had come out as Thai actually, and the Thai Delhi. We had come out and said India would have 100 unicorns by 2025, and everybody said there's no chance that's going to happen, right? I mean, this year we are going to exit this year well north of 60 unicorns. But despite all the progress that we've made, Raj, Indian startup ecosystem is barely getting started, right? And that's really important to keep in mind. And the reason is, if you look at where we are, and by the way, I'm going to focus on tech and tech-enabled, Raj, right? Because I'm sure there are entrepreneurs that are in many other different fields, like industrial products, consumer products, life sciences, pharma, and so on and so forth, real estate, infrastructure. I'm not going to talk about all those because I don't know anything about those things, those industries, right? But if I look at just tech and tech-enabled, like if you look at India today, we have about 500 million daily active users on the internet. They consume about 19 gigabytes per user per month, which is extraordinary, by the way, because before Jio launched, that number was less than a gigabyte per user per month. We have about 250 million Indians that use digital payments instruments, right? So UPI is a large part of it, wallets and so on and so forth. And today's e-commerce market in India is, a little north of $40 billion, right? So let's look at Amazon, Flipkart, Nykaa, etc. Everybody put together, maybe we're getting closer to around 45 billion or something like that. But all of this is in an India, Raj, that is $2,000 per capita. Okay, we are just about, above the line where you're called a very poor country. right? So we call ourselves an emerging nation because you can't, call yourself a poor country. So, so this is at $2,000 per capita, right? So I think what's going to happen over the next decade, Raj, is a few things, right? By 2025, India will have 1 billion internet users that are connecting to the internet every single day. 1 billion, okay? They're probably going to consume, I would say, 25 gigabytes per user per month, right? So we'll go from 19 to 25 gigabytes per user per month. We will have over 100 million Indians' homes that will have basically connected televisions, okay? Today, there's about, a couple of million homes with connected televisions. What I mean by that is you can stream the internet on television, right? We will have not just 1 billion connected users on the internet, we'll probably have 600 to 700 million Indians who will use digital payments instruments. This is all over the next 5 years, okay? But over the next 10 years, India will go from $2,000 per capita to well north of $4,000 per capita, right? In the internet ecosystem, Raj, there's a magic GDP per capita number, which is $4,000 per capita, right? Because between $2,000 and $4,000 per capita, all disposable income that a consumer has, that a household has, goes into a few things, right? It goes into education for the children, it goes into healthcare, it goes into better sort of a house, try to get a slightly better house, and it goes into transport. Those are really the 4 things. But when you go above $4,000 per capita is when a whole household actually begins to have some level of disposable income, right? So you can spend on things like fashion or electronics or vacations or so on and so forth. So if you look at China, China crossed $4,000 per capita in the year 2009. And in that 1 year, Raj, Alibaba's GMV went up $50 billion. 1 year. That was the inflection point, right? Now, Alibaba's GMV now is, over 1.3 or 1.4 trillion dollars, right? I mean, it's pretty interesting, Raj, Alibaba's GMV is more than half of India's GDP, so that's how big e-commerce is going to get in India, right? So we should kind of keep this in mind. And in fact, Indonesia's e-commerce market is bigger than India's e-commerce market, despite Indonesia only having less than, it's got like one-fifth the population of India. And the reason is because Indonesia is now at $4,000 GDP per capita. So when you put it in context, in that context, right, what we are seeing today, despite all the excitement, and we should naturally be very excited, this is the trailer. The movie hasn't started yet. So for those of you who are movie buffs, right, what you're seeing now is the trailer, right? And so a lot of what, I mean, the real hyper, the hyper scaling of an ecosystem is yet to come, Raj. It's probably 3, 4, 5, 6 years away, because today what you're seeing is you're seeing a handful of companies, Raj, right? I don't know how many of you are familiar with Whitehead Jr. Whitehead Jr. was the fastest 0 to 100 million revenue company in India's history, 5,000 years of history. Okay, Whitehead Jr. is basically coding for kids company, right? They went from 0 to $100 million of revenue from the time that Karan Bajaj, who just left Whitehead Jr., because they sold the company to Byju, as you guys know. They went from 0 to $100 million of revenue in 12 months, Raj, right? But that today is an anomaly. I mean, we don't see that a lot, right? But what I can tell you, Raj, is from 2025 onwards, we're going to see this a lot. As an entrepreneur, you can launch a company, and if you do it in the right space with the right team, with an extremely compelling product, you can get to 1,000 crores of revenue in 1 or 2 years and do it profitably. And by the way, I'm not talking about GMV, right? So you can talk about GMV, you can gross merchandise value, you can talk about TPV. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about revenue, the revenue that Raj knows to talk about, right? I mean, there's only one definition of revenue. There aren't too many definitions of revenue. So I think, that's what's about to come. So in that context, Raj, I think there's going to be innovation everywhere, right? Like just this week, we met a super interesting EV, electric vehicle company, right? That's an electric vehicle OEM. You look at the whole automotive space, 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, 4-wheelers, right? That's going to be transformed. You look at the whole energy space. I mean, with Reliance announcing what they're going to do in solar, right? I mean, we're going to see so many innovations coming up in the clean energy, clean tech sort of space, right? You can look at food, you can look at agriculture. So one of the most exciting sectors Raj, that Sequoia, we are investing is agricultural technologies, right? And it's not just making software for farmers, right? It's completely reimagining how value chains work, in agriculture, right? You can look at consumer brands, consumer products. So across the board, we're going to see, massive innovation, right? I mean, I'm hard pressed to imagine, an industry that is not going to be impacted by very significant innovation, Raj, over the next decade.
Fascinating. I'm waiting for 2025 to come and, enjoy 4,000 GDP. Right now, I'm told we are less than Bangladesh, so it's not a good sign. But anyway, do you expect more IPOs in India, to go the Zomato way, which is, list them in India instead of abroad? I mean, it is fascinating that how they did that and how successful it was. I mean,
yeah, I think. Look, we will certainly see many more IPOs, right? I mean, Paytm is going to go public, Policy Bazaar is going to go public, Nykaa is going to go public, Delivery is going to go public, Ixigo is going to go public, MobiKwik is going to go public. All these companies are going to go public. I think. Look, let's keep in mind, and obviously Zomato has been very successful. I think many of these companies will be very successful. But Raj, as you know, I mean, if you've been an investor for a long period of time, right? Markets go up and markets come down. That there are few things you can predict in life. You're going to die someday, and then markets that go up rapidly, also markets come down, right? But what's important though is that many of these companies, Raj, are very, very strong companies, right? So if you take a 10-year view, like a company like a Zomato or a Policy Bazaar or a Paytm, these are, fundamentally good companies that will keep growing for a long period of time, right? So whether stock price is correct or not, who knows, right? That depends. But as I said, look, markets that go way up really fast also come down really fast, right? So I think you'll continue to see that, Raj, in India. But also, look, I don't know whether you saw, but the Economic Times carried it last week, where a number of the founders and investors in the ecosystem had written to the Prime Minister, requesting that the direct listing of Indian companies on overseas exchanges, right, like NASDAQ, for instance. And the reason is very simple. I think that's an important unlock for our ecosystem, right? Because basically what we should do is we should let our entrepreneurs raise capital from wherever they can raise capital, right? Because the reality is, as you know, the world is awash with capital today, right? And we should make sure that we have a level playing field for our Indian entrepreneurs. India is actually the only large startup nation that does not let its startups to list directly in selected international exchanges, right? We're not saying be able to list in any international exchange, right? But NASDAQ and UK and a few other markets which are very, very deep, right? And we think that's important. So long answer to your question, Raj, you will see many more IPOs, startup IPOs happen in the Indian exchanges, but we are all really also hoping that India will finally, it's down to the last mile. It was announced by our Honorable Finance Minister last year. So we are waiting for sort of the last push so that you can also open up international direct listings for Indian startups.
Thank you. What would be the role of government in promoting startups? I mean, India has a startup initiative under the Department of Promotion and under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. In the private sector, of course, we have firms like yours who are there. Do you see government playing any important role for startups in India?
Yeah, no, I think, look, the Indian government, interestingly, Raj, has been one of the most progressive when it comes to startups, right? So, I look at it at multiple levels, Raj. One is building public digital infrastructure. Like, for instance, Aadhaar, right, has been one of the single biggest enablers of the digital ecosystem. A lot of people talk about it. UPI, right? India today, Raj, I don't know whether you know this, but India today has the most advanced digital payments ecosystem in the world by far. In fact, Sundar Pichai, who's the Google CEO, wrote to the US government saying, you guys should, do something like UPI. And by the way, we went from being one of the, least advanced, we had no digital payments ecosystem in 2015, right? In a period of 5 years, we've gone from not having a digital payments ecosystem to having the most advanced digital payments ecosystem. And, and all the credit really goes to UPI, Raj, right? So UPI is was actually, that's basically launched by NPCI, which is a government-owned entity. And now you have frameworks like Aadhaar, etc. So, so one part of this is sort of this, what I called, population scale public digital infrastructure that enables sort of these sort of very innovative solutions to get built. That's number one. I think number two, look, India has, as you know, like a 10,000 crore fund of funds that's being deployed by SIDBI. That is to fund local fund managers, right? Local venture capital funds. I think 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 crores has already been deployed. I was on the external committee before I joined Sequoia on that. And, it's very progressive, by the way. Very few countries do that, right? Where you set aside $1.5 billion saying, we will help anchor local fund managers, right? So that's that. Also, like, by the way, there are lots of central schemes, state level schemes adding up to several, many, tens of billions of dollars that is beginning to get deployed. So that's the second one, right? Which is, providing the funding. I think the third one really is, look, in many ways, right? I think what Startup India, the government Startup India team under Mr. Anil Agrawal and others, what they help sort of evangelize startups, right? Look, at the end of the day, what do we want, Raj, right? We want the number one graduate from all the IITs, right? Their preferred thing to do when they graduate should be to start their own company. Right? And we want every Indian in every village. We have 630,000 villages in India, right? We want every Indian in every village to want to start up and also have the tools to, by the way, you don't have to build an internet company, right? You can build whatever company. I mean, like, start up and be a self-made entrepreneur. So I think the government plays a very, very critical role. Obviously, the important thing is, look, there are a number of enablers, right? Like, for instance, passing the regulation that would enable Indian companies to list directly in international markets, right? Like, that's a simple thing to do, right? Where we should do that because that's an unlock, right? Making sure that we have policy stability. Right? We can't keep changing these policies all the time, right? How do we make sure that we have policy stability? I think that's very, very important, right? Ease of doing business, right? I mean, we should be number one country to do ease of doing business, right? I mean, as all of us know, we are not number one. So we should do that because, that will make it much easier for companies to start up. Because today, obviously, being an entrepreneur, Raj, you know this better than anybody else, being an entrepreneur in India is not easy, right? How do we make sure that tax is not your enemy? We should make sure that the taxation regime, obviously many more Indians in India should absolutely pay tax. There's no debate of that, right? But how do we make sure that, for instance, the whole angel tax issue that we had, that was very, very painful. Now, fortunately, again, right, the government stepped in, they addressed that, and they sorted that out. So look, I am, I have been extremely impressed, Raj, with what the government has done for startups in India. I think they really understand what startups can do. But it's like everything else, right? This is the trailer. Let the movie begin.
This reminds me of Shah Rukh Khan and some movie, I think, but I forget the name of the movie. Movie abhi tak baki hai. Coming to Goa, Rajan, I mean, you love Goa, your family loves Goa. Bangalore is referred to as the Silicon Valley of this region. What goes on to make the region a hub for startups? And how can Goa, what can Goa do? What are the 5 things Goa can do to make it a hub for startups? I mean, it's a great place, great climate. Everybody loves Goa. You have creative people at their best in Goa. I know from the art world that a lot of creative people, and now people who are doing animation and creative writing and in the arts are moving to Goa as second homes. So what can we do to Goa to make it a startup hub? Or is it impossible?
No, nothing is impossible, right? I mean, think about it, right? India was not a startup nation 10 years ago, right? So, I mean, now we have like 21 unicorns in 31 weeks. Or 22 unicorns in 22 new unicorns in 32 weeks. I mean, it's just a crazy thing, right? So look, anything is possible. Look, and I do think Goa is a very interesting, you're strategically well positioned, right? It's a great place to be, as you said. Look, I think there's one thing you could do, Raj, which is find a way to either attract or cultivate a few thousand high quality engineers, right? Today, the single biggest gap that we have, the challenge that we have in India is getting quality engineers has been very, very difficult for startups, right? Those of you that are in the tech space will know what's going on in Bangalore, for instance, right? I mean, there's a crazy war for talent. So what I would say, Raj, you and your friends in Goa, you guys should get together and see, like for instance, right, there's a company called Scalar Academy, right? What Scalar does, Raj, is over a period of 6 months, and they also have a 10-month program, they can take an average programmer and make them sort of a Google quality engineer. Okay. I would partner up with Scalar as Goa and say, some combination of, the large industrialists like yourselves and the state government. I would underwrite these guys and say, you train us 10,000 high quality engineers. Okay. And then you tell the engineers, look, we will train you, but we want one commitment to you. You got to stay in Goa. Okay. That's one thing I would do. The other thing you should do is, look, you should go to, there are 55 unicorns in India. Raj, you and a few of the industrialists and your chief minister should go and meet every single one of them. In fact, invite them all to Goa, right? And you just ask them one question. What would it take for you to come and just hire 100 engineers in Goa? That's it. 100. We just want you to hire 100. So imagine, let's say 2 years from now, right? You have 10,000 high quality engineers, 100 engineers per company. You will have 100 startups who will come and have dev centers in Goa. Within 4 years, Raj, you will have an ecosystem. But you're going to have to do something radical like that. Having a few startup warehouses and some incubator, it doesn't make, we are well beyond that now. You have to do something bold and radical. And I think something like that makes sense.
And I would definitely look at this and talk to the concerned people and our chief minister out here. He's very
it's very interesting, Raj. I don't know whether you know this, but when Chandrababu Naidu, when he attracted Microsoft, Google, all these other companies, right? I mean, right? He's an extraordinary salesperson, right? Yeah. He would go and meet Bill Gates and he would exactly do what I just said. You tell me what you want. Right? I don't know whether you guys have ever done that, right? I have no idea whether Goa has ever done that. And by the way, to be fair, look, I don't know what you've done, but I'm saying, if you've done that, great. But I do think today is a great opportunity because talent is the gap. And I think you all have an opportunity if you can, obviously you're going to have to make some investments, right? But, set a goal. We want to have 10,000 Google quality engineers in Goa in 2 years. And I'm telling you, it can be done. It can be done.
Excellent. I'm going to definitely, I think I'll get my chief minister to meet you sometime and then get inspired. So I think I'll arrange that during your next trip or when he goes to Delhi. But thank you so much for your advice. I think we'll have to work on this seriously. We are running out of time, Rajan. Can you share with us your hobbies and pleasures? I know a few of them, but I don't want to say that here. But what are your hobbies and pleasures personally? And when do you find time to do that?
Hey, I'm sorry, Raj, my connection dropped out. I didn't hear the question.
Okay. No, I just wanted to, we are running out of time. Just wanted to touch on something personally. What are your personal passions and hobbies? I know you have a lot of them. You're very talented, very creative. But just share with us what are your.
Raj, I actually don't have hobbies. It's I should probably find one. I have no time for hobbies. I wish I had a hobby. In fact, Radhika.
Oh, you're cut. I think you're gone offline. Oops. Come back. Let me just. Just hold on, guys. We're just trying to get him back online.
Hi, Raj.
Hi, sorry. I think
Hey, sorry, Raj. My electricity went off. So here's an innovation. How do we make sure the electricity doesn't go off? I'm in Delhi. Can you hear me?
yeah, we can. Just wanted to ask you. You said you don't have any personal hobby and you want to get one,
No.
but you do love the arts. I mean, you have
No. So I was going to say, look, I mean, I think in the free time that I have, as you know, my wife Radhika is really, loves art. So I spent time with her, which is how we met. I came to Goa because she loves to go to these various places to actually see great art. And so that's something that I do. I mean, and what I love about that is because, it's a world that's not my world. Right. So every minute sort of a new learning for me. So I love doing that. And then we have a daughter who's 15, Raj. So, I spend time with her. Of course, she's a teenager, so she doesn't want to spend time with me. But whatever time I can, I try to spend with her. But other than that, look, I like to learn about new things. So very interesting, Raj. So I'm taking an online course on climate. So there's a company called Terra.do. Terra, Terra.do. They have a 12-week online course on climate. So I like to learn about new things, right? So last year I was learning a lot about blockchain and Web3. This year I really want to learn about climate. I don't know what I'm going to be learning about next year, but I like to sort of read a lot. I like to learn, and that's sort of probably what I do. I'm kind of nerdy that way. But I do aspire someday to have a hobby, Raj. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but maybe someday.
Okay, and to close, you talked about a few of the qualities like resilience, grit, but what are your 5
Sorry, Raj, you're on mute.
A lot of young people today who are watching you, and and you are quite an inspiration for them. So what do you advise them besides resilience and grit? Of course, those are also important, but what else would you say? What are your personal 5?
Yeah, I think figure out what you like to do, right? What you're passionate about, but also what you're passionate about and what you're good at, right? I gave you my story at the very beginning, Raj, which is I was very passionate about sport, but I was terrible. Passion with no capability is not a good place to be, right? So I think finding something you're passionate about where you can build capability, right? And by the way, I tried really hard. I tried really hard to be a good sports person. I trained like crazy, but I was not good. So I think that's the first thing, right? I think because if you find something that you have a lot of excitement, passion for, and you can build capability to be good at it, what happens is, you compound, right? Every year you just get better and better and better and better. So I think that's one thing, right? I think second is, look, work with people that you enjoy being around, right? This is really, really important. I've always tried to work in companies where I thought the people were amazing, work in teams where I thought the people were amazing. So I think that's number 2. I think third one, especially for, today's younger generation, try to stick with something for a long period of time. I think the Instagram generation likes to do different things every year. 1 year they're doing something, next year doing this, something else. The problem when you do that, Raj, as you know, is you don't get to be good at anything. Like I sometimes, I look at these young candidates, they come to me and, they've been out of the workforce for like 6 years and I have no idea what they've been doing. Because like 5 different companies, different roles. I mean, like what, and like they fundamentally, so trying to look, I'm not saying, be like me or be like you, Raj, where you do something for decades, right? I mean, I spent 11 years at McKinsey, then I spent 15 years running tech companies. I don't mean that, but at least, like try to stick with something for some period of time where you can actually build some expertise, right? I think that's really, really important, is sticking with it, right? So there's this notion called 10,000 hour rule. I think it's very, very important. And finally, look, I think, try to have an impact on the world, right? I mean, we're all here for 70, 80, some of you who are very young will probably live to be 150 years old. That's a long time, so that's what I like this whole hobby question, Raj. I think I have a lot of time to get a hobby, I want to do other stuff now, I want to do other stuff. So but I think, try to find a way to have an impact on the world. And I think the great opportunity is today. I mean, you look at just India, right? 1.3 billion people, 1.4 billion. going to 2 billion in a hurry. So, I mean, the ability for us to have an impact on so many people, in this country, around the world, there's never been a time like this, right? Where you can truly have an impact. And it doesn't matter, by the way, what you do, right? But just have that. And I think that's one thing I really like about the younger generations today, right? They're very, very focused on making an impact, making a difference. And I think that's wonderful. And last thing is, look, have fun. And I think you guys in Goa specialize in that. So, have a great time while you're having impact. Raj, you're on mute.
I don't know why this goes on mute. Last question before we wind up. This is regarding women and startups. Only 12% of venture-backed startups in India, and I'm told 20% in Asian, have one female founder as of 2020. How can India change this landscape, and tell us why it is more important for the environment to be more conducive to female founders?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's very important because, half our nation is women, half our consumers are women. As you know, I mean, women are extraordinary leaders, right? It's very funny, Raj, my mom's an entrepreneur, my wife's an entrepreneur, my daughter wants to be an entrepreneur. Most of my friends are women who are entrepreneurs, right? And they're all really good, because what's interesting about female entrepreneurs, Raj, is they focus on getting it done. There's very little sort of showmanship. They're just getting it done. They're building great companies, right? So I think it's really important because, we should make sure that half our population, and quite frankly, the half that is actually arguably more capable, than the other half, the one, should be entrepreneurs, right? And I must tell you, look, I think in our current surge cohort, Raj, 30% of our startups are led by women, female founders, right? And they're extraordinary. I mean, they're extraordinary. So I think, look, we at Sequoia, we launched this program called Spark. Right, where it's one of the many things that we're doing, Sequoia Spark. So for those of you, if there are young female, just female founders, it's a mentorship program. We give you a small fellowship. We don't take any equity, right? We give you $100,000, but more important than that is we have a 1-year sort of intense mentoring sort of program where we can help female founders. So as you said, look, only 2 of the unicorns today, right? So Divya, who's the co-founder of Byju's, is and now with Falguni at Nykaa, right? But many more will come, Raj. But it is an absolute priority for us as an ecosystem. But it's also an absolute priority as a nation, right? Only 23% of women in India are in the workforce, right? And that's not good. I mean, we need that number to get to 50 and get that number to be, I mean, like literally 70-80% of our women should be in the workforce. I mean, that's how we're going to go from $2,000 per capita to $10,000 per capita, which is where we should be at a minimum.
So thank you so much, Rajan, for giving us your time and it has been fascinating. It'll take me a while to digest whatever you've said because it's not easy. But everything carries so much depth and so much of wisdom. Thank you so much for the grace of your time and spending time with us. We at ICG are honored to have you talk to us and hope to see you maybe for Christmas or New Year's in Goa this year. Thank you once again very much.
Thank you very much, Raj, for having me, and Yatin. Thank you for hosting us. It's wonderful to be with all of you and stay safe in Goa.
Thank you, Rajan. Very inspiring.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.